Coming up on Clearcut Plus, President Trump announces a shakeup within his administration, a new UN ambassador, a new attorney general, changes with his joint chiefs. We'll have the details. Plus, speaking of hiring, questions about the practices at Trump's National Golf Club in New Jersey. Two women coming forward to say that the club hired them even though they're illegally in the country. And 77 years later, remembering the attack on Pearl Harbor.
From the i24 news studio in Times Square in New York, this is Clearcut Plus with Michelle Makori.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. It was a very busy Friday for Washington. Federal prosecutors recommending significant jail time for Michael Cohen, the president's former personal lawyer. There was also a special prosecutor's memo on Paul Manafort, which is being kept largely secret. But before all of that happened, President Trump announced a shakeup in his administration. The president naming his new choices for Attorney General and his new ambassador to the United Nations, while hinting that there could be further changes to come. Kenneth Moten reports.
Nearly a month after Jeff Sessions was forced to resign as Attorney General, President Trump announced that he is nominating William Barr to replace him as the head of the Justice Department.
One of the most respected jurists in the country, highly respected lawyer. I did not know him until recently when I went through the process of looking at people, and he was my first choice from day one.
The president expects Barr will be confirmed quickly by the Senate. That is likely given that Barr has already served as Attorney General, working for President George H.W. Bush in the early 1990s. Barr has been quoted saying he believes there is more basis to investigate a uranium deal approved while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State than potential collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign. If confirmed, he will oversee the special counsel probe. When Barr was the Attorney General, he was Robert Mueller's boss. The president also announced that State Department spokeswoman Heather Nauert will be his pick to be UN ambassador.
She's very talented, very smart, very quick, and I think she's going to be respected by all.
Nauert came to her current State Department job without any government or foreign policy experience. She previously worked for ABC News and was an anchor of Fox and Friends, the president's favorite cable news show. The president didn't confirm, but sources tell ABC News he is also likely to replace Chief of Staff John Kelly. Sources say the leading candidate to replace him, Nick Ayers, who currently serves as the vice president's chief of staff.
And that may not be the end of the shakeups. President Trump telling reporters today that he plans to make an announcement tomorrow at the Army-Navy game that involves a shakeup of his Joint Chiefs. Joining me now to talk about all the shakeups and more is Tom Borelli, contributor to the Conservative Review, and Roger Fisk, a Democratic strategist who served in the Obama administration from 2009 to 2016. Gentlemen, good to have you with us.
Great to be back. Thank you.
All right, let's start with you, Roger. William Barr as Attorney General. Your reaction?
It's actually, you know, kind of a departure from the Trump norm because he's not a Fox News personality. So, and he's actually experienced and competent in his field. So this is a refreshing departure from many of the other Trump hires. So I actually welcome this.
Interesting response. Tom, what do you think?
Oh, Mr. Barr, you know, he's been there and done that. He's a very high qualified lawyer. He's worked in corporate law at corporations. He's worked in the Department of Justice. So he's very high qualified. And back in 1991, the Democrats voted for him unanimously when they had control by a voice vote. Even the late Senator Ted Kennedy voted for him. Pat Leahy voted for him.
Right.
Representative Chuck Schumer liked him back then as well. So he's highly qualified. I don't see a problem.
Okay, Roger, you don't see a problem. Tom doesn't see a problem. And there really couldn't be a big problem because the Republicans do control the Senate with 53 seats there. But do you think he will face a lot of opposition from Democrats?
It's the issue that he's going to face is not himself as an individual. It's that he's being nominated by a president who puts obedience to himself above the rule of law and above fidelity to the Constitution and above service to the American people.
Well,
so what he's going to face is going to be grilling by senators who want to know that he's going to be independent, that he will not conduct his leadership over the Justice Department in a way that is at the whim of a president who we've seen from the president's own words in the last 2 years. He expects the Attorney General to do his bidding. He expects the Attorney General to open up investigations that he wants opened up, and he expects the Attorney General to close investigations that he wants closed. So, yes, this individual has experience, and he's sat in the very seat he may fill again. Unfortunately for him, the context of his nomination is quite different because he's being nominated by someone who
obviously you don't like
over
hasn't said
fidelity.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, you have no respect.
Go ahead, Tom.
No, thank you. Obviously, you have no respect for President Trump or any of his nominations. So, I mean, you made that point clear. But we've
only spoken about one, so you can't extrapolate that into other nominations.
I'm basing what we just heard, just what you just basically said. Shots against Fox News. In some ways, that's kind of unprofessional, but that's okay. Let's get back to the discussion. What we're talking about is a man who's highly qualified. He's highly qualified to be the Attorney General of the United States. We can agree on that, can't we? Without the side shots at President Trump.
Well, he said he's highly qualified.
He himself has.
All right,
I have to be able to respond to that. He himself repeatedly called out Jeff Sessions for not doing his bidding, irrespective of the rule of law.
Which bidding was that?
The president cannot just arbitrarily investigate his political opponents.
The president not putting public service ahead of himself, but we'll let that slide for now. Let's talk about Heather Nauert. Approve or disapprove?
Full disclosure, I know Heather Nauert. I worked with her in the early 90s. She's a very smart woman. She's very passionate about her work, a very capable woman. And with respect to experience, she's actually worked now in the State Department for about 1.5 years. That's actually more than Nikki Haley had at that time, because Nikki Haley was, a governor of South Carolina. Not a lot of diplomatic experience there. So I expect a lot from Heather. I know her personally, and I would speak for her on her behalf at any point.
Roger, other than the fact that it seems like you take issue that she used to work on Fox News, what do you make of her?
Not much, frankly. It's interesting that we're having this conversation on the anniversary of Pearl Harbor when she referenced D-Day as one of the iconic moments of the American-German alliance. So this is who's going to be going to the United Nations now. To think of where she was 2 or 3 years ago and that she is now going to be heading up into this beehive of very complex issues with multiple hotspots around the world.
You don't have a problem with smart, capable women, do you?
Sorry. Oh, yeah, I do, Tom. That's exactly
I thought so.
it. Let me know when there's going to be someone who can referee this conversation so I can finish my point. But until then, we'll give Tom the floor.
We're refereing the conversation very well, Roger. He's just giving him a chance to respond there whilst you could argue you're dominating the...
You just allowed him to question my character by saying that I was against her because she's a woman.
It's called a debate.
I'm well aware of what it's called.
It's called a debate, and I'm sure you can handle yourself, and Tom can handle himself. All right, before we go to break, we have time to talk about one other topic here. And that's John Kelly. There are reports that he may be honorably discharged, if you will, that he may be ready to leave. What do you make of that, Tom?
Well, look, working for President Trump isn't an easy task. The man doesn't sleep. And I believe Mr. Kelly has done a remarkable job at first as a general. Now, when he came into the White House, he was really to get control because a lot of people were just walking in and out of the Oval Office. I think he's got that part under control. I think it's, we're coming up on an election in 2020. He's a general. I think you need someone at that staff level with more political experience for the campaign.
Roger, before we go to break, we'll give it to you. What's your response?
Sure. Every day, the president builds a cartoonish unreality around him, mainly based on falsehoods and lies. So when he says he won New Hampshire, which he has said that he won New Hampshire, and then he expects the people around him to say, yes, boss, he won New Hampshire. When he says he won the women's vote, he expects the people around him to say that. And when he says U.S. Steel is opening 6 plants in the U.S., he expects the people around him to toe that line and say, yes, they are. One of the issues you're seeing between the president and the generals is they can't live in an alternate reality world. They have to deal with the lives of
much safer under the president.
So they
we're
will
going to have
not.
to
They
leave
will
it there.
not
We're up
subscribe
against
to
a
the
hot break. But
unreality
thank
that
you so
President Trump
much,
builds
Roger
around
Frisk.
himself
Very
every day.
feisty Tom Borelli. Appreciate